નમસ્કાર દોસ્તો, સુરત ખૂબસૂરતમાં આપનું સ્વાગત છે. મિત્રો, અગાઉ મેં વાત કરી હતી કે સુરતમાં જે ઐતિહાસિક સિમેટ્રીઝ છે એ સિમેટ્રીઝ દરેક વ્યક્તિઓ માટે એક સંશોધનનું કેન્દ્ર છે. જેમણે પણ એને જે દૃષ્ટિથી જોયું છે તો એ દૃષ્ટિ એમની અલગ અલગ હોય છે. જે લોકો રિસર્ચ કરે છે તો એમના પણ જુદા જુદા એંગલ હોય છે. તો આજે આપણી સાથે ઝૈનબ બાસ્તાવાલા છે. તેમણે સિમેટ્રીઝના જે કબર લેખો છે એને એક અલગ રીતેથી જોવાનો પ્રયત્ન કર્યો છે અને તેના પર સંશોધન કર્યું અને તેનું રિસર્ચ પેપર અમેરિકાની યુનિવર્સિટીમાંથી એમણે રિપ્રેઝેન્ટ કર્યું છે. તો આ જે કબર લેખોની ઉપર ટાઇપોગ્રાફી છે, જેને ટાઇપોગ્રાફી કહેવામાં આવે છે, તો એ જુદા જુદા અક્ષરો કઈ રીતે આની અંદર આ કબર લેખની અંદર આવ્યા છે, તો એક જ કબર લેખની અંદર જુદા જુદા ફોન્ટનો ઉપયોગ થયો છે. તો એ આપણે એની સરસ વિગતો આપણે ઝૈનબ પાસેથી આજે જાણીશું.
Hello everyone, and thank you Sanjay bhai for calling me and giving me this opportunity to talk about my interest and my research about the British cemetery, and not just one but actually we have 3 cemeteries in Surat. I would like to give a little bit of a background of myself. I have done commercial art from Surat Polytechnic. After that I did my bachelor's in Swinburne University in Australia, and after that I did my master's in typeface design from University of Reading in UK. So my route or my cause of having this research actually started when I was doing my master's in typeface design, and where we were taught how research can be expanded into very different level of either it's a typography setting, it's a typeface design, or in any historical context. So to be my surprise, when I came back to Surat after finishing my master's, I was not knowing that we have an amazing treasure of cemetery in Surat. And I think my exposure comes from Sanjay bhai, that he told me, why don't you come and check out the cemetery what we have, and it might give you an interest. I was like, okay, well, let's go and have a look. So I think I remember we went in 2017 when I came in when I came to Surat, and you took me for the first time to the cemetery, and I was just astonished to see that this is an immersed work of historical context. It has this idea of how East India Company would have settled in Surat back in those days, and the graves where the people lie in there, they all are Britishers, and they have done some political or social reforms in Surat and all over India. So today my whole aspect of talking about this is to share you how this cemetery doesn't just hold as an historical monument, but also it has this lettering carving on the grave. So overall we have graveyards in British Cemetery, around 200 graves, where 140 are still intact, and they can be clearly visible how beautiful and delicate the carvings and the letterings are still lying on the stone. But some of them are damaged, some are being actually stolen as well, and some are on the point of erosion. So the concept of my research here is just not to give that cemetery an another look or perspective from a point of view of a typographer, but also to share with the city that this is a very important aspect of our own city, which needs to be cultivated, it needs to be revived, and it needs to be recycled in a way that people would go and see that, all right, this is kind of a museum figure, this is kind of a history where you need to know how Surat has gone a very different phase back in those days. So saying that, I presented a paper in one of the conferences last year, which is called A-Type-I, and my conference paper was about scratching the past of the graveyards. And certainly that whole concept of paper was to show the typography on the graveyard. So when I started scratching the characters from the stone itself, they were very uneven for me, even because when the carver or the incised or maybe the trade person who would have done it, it seems that they had a very skill based idea that they would either copy it from some references given by the Britishers, or they would have got influenced by the letters, what they would have seen it from Western examples of references. So I would share a few ideas, like how one of the graveyard which actually stood, and I incised, I did the whole sketching of it, that it was a slab of, let's say, 1 foot by 1.5 feet, and that graveyard was of a small kid when he died of some disease back in those days. And the carver has done immensely beautiful letters on it, and it shows the delicacy, it shows the swashes or flourishes where Italian artists used to do it. They are the letterers I am talking about. And when I had dig more into it, it turns out that some of these stones were actually being exported from Netherlands and England, and some of them were actually taken ideas or given ideas to the people who were being doing the carvings, or as a carver. They were given some kind of a reference that, okay, this is how I want the letter C and this is how I want the letter E. So because the stone itself have a very variety of characters on the slab as well, so from that I can see that each character has been planned and each character has been given that idea of ornaments or the idea of decorative form where they wanted to present as a graveyard. Because what we see from those cemetery is that if a person dies, it's not just written or it's not just done mechanically, but I think the idea was to give a memory to them by carving such beautiful letters on it. So that the example what I am talking about, that standalone graveyard slab has almost 10 to 15 different letter S in one slab, and I was just amazed to see that how this carver would have either gone crazy or either would have just thought, I have got a lot of chance to use different S, let me just put different S on every word or every line, right? So that was something interesting to see. And another grave what I saw was almost 5 feet as width, I would say, and the height was almost 4.5 feet where we are standing at this single mausoleum. And that grave had 4 to 5 different lettering style. Now when I say lettering style, means these are not calligraphic but these are lettering. Lettering means where the carver would have got influenced by the lettering artist, mostly by English or Italian or French. So you will see the style like black letter, style like flourishing, style like foniers, then also some of very sans serif and very straight looking letters as well. So I guess the information what they wanted to spread was like, if the name of the person who is sitting or lying in a grave would be very decorative, very flourishing, and then the subtitle or the address would be in black letter, and then little information about what they have done during East India Company would be in sans serif, and then address or the date, maybe the date or the birth date would be in serif. So that kind of a hierarchy you could see it in different slabs as well. And some of them have a very simple, decent looking typography, but some has a very elaborative and a very, I would say, that inquisitive as well, because I guess it depends on whoever was there on a post in East India Company, saying as a mayor or an officer, would give a more importance rather than a person who would just be as a serviceman or something like that. So I think this grave also gives the differences that how this person would have worked during that time in the region. Yeah. And saying that, I would also address here that when I started scribbling it, and I was very fascinated about not just the Latin characters on it, because the graveyard is not written in a normal English language or something you would understand, but the dates or the birth date or the death date is also written in a Latin verses, right? Comparison to that, when you see the Dutch cemetery and Armenian cemetery again, so the stones, what they have it on it is very angelic, a lot of gospel letters, illustrations. It's full of illustrations, I would say that, because I guess it was more about a storytelling kind of a feature they wanted to give on the graveyard itself. And as far as I remember, I have a very good friend who is an Armenian, and he actually told me about it, that this is an old Armenian script where people are not using it anymore. It's very old. The dialect is old as well. Some of the letter forms are also very old. So that's why I'm guessing it that it has an historical context, not from a perspective when Armenians were in India at that moment, or maybe they were a lot in Surat, but also that what they have bring with them along when they come to Surat. Same thing goes to Dutch. Again, Dutch has their own Dutch language on it, when the script, I would say that, when it's been carved, and it says that most of the slabs were actually exported from Netherlands. So I would be saying that they were carved and incised in Netherlands and exported to India during that time, which is very fascinating, because the carver or the sculptors who would have done that are not there, and we could actually see their forms and letters in Surat, which is I would say it's like an historical icon, right? Other than seeing from another point of view that how this can be revived, or how this can actually gain a prospect, not from a point of view of a researcher, but also as a city viewer, like how we have museums. Why can't be this graveyard or this cemetery be a part of a museum where people come and have a look them from a very different perspective, not just as a cemetery, right? So this would also open up linguistics and literature person who are writing articles or publishing. It would be a very much interest to them as well. That's my perspective. And from a point of view of a type designer, what I did next with this graveyard is that I took the letters, I digitalized them and started making an archive of it. So then if in case the graveyard or the stones are stolen, or they've been how we say demises, if happens anything like that, at least we have an archive version of those characters. So by actually doing this, I get this intuition that this can be a really good beginning of one PhD if I would like to pursue it in my future career. So yeah, I hope for the best for a cemeterian as well. And well, I'm back into Surat, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to go again and do a lot of scribbing too. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you would get a chance and go to a cemetery and see it from a very different perspective, maybe a typographer's perspective, where you can see and touch the letters and feel it, that how differently they were being carved and incised back in those days. Thank you.
ખૂબ સરસ દોસ્તો, હવે તમે જ્યારે સિમેટ્રી જોવા જશો ત્યારે તમે નવી દૃષ્ટિથી જોજો, અને ઝૈનબે કહ્યું છે તે પ્રમાણે ત્યાં જે કબર લેખો છે એને વાંચવાનો પ્રયત્ન કરજો, એના જે ટાઈપ ફેસ છે એને તમે જુદી રીતે સમજવાનો પ્રયત્ન કરજો. ઝૈનબ જે પીએચડી કરવા માંગે છે આપણી સિમેટ્રી ઉપર, તો આપણે એમને આમંત્રણ પાઠવીએ છીએ કે ભવિષ્યમાં એ યુએસ જાય છે અને ત્યાંથી પણ પીએચડી કરવા માટે અહીંયા સુરત આવે, આપણે એવી આશા રાખીએ છીએ અને ખૂબ ખૂબ શુભેચ્છા પાઠવી છે. ઝૈનબનો આભાર માનીએ છીએ. થેન્ક યુ વેરી મચ.